Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Suncoast Tiger Bay special event. My name is Barclay Harless. I'm the president of the Suncoast Tiger Bay Club and your host for this virtual panel discussion. Joining us is Amy Cianci, who will be assisting us with questions during the Q&A portion of the presentation. For those of you joining us for the first time, the Suncoast Tiger Bay Club serves as a civic commons where thought leaders and citizens of all political stripes come together to discuss the pressing issues of our day. These conversations are always important, but in these challenging weeks, they have become something much deeper and more important. Even though we cannot be together at our regularly scheduled luncheons, Tiger Bay will continue the conversation through virtual events such as this. Please help support our continuing commitment to bringing you these timely and informative events by becoming a member, renewing your membership, or donating today. A donation of $25 or $35, what you would have spent at a Tiger Bay luncheon, will help sustain our club and the programming through these tough times and allow us to continue to keep you informed and connected to our community. That said, I would like to thank everyone for the webinar and for joining us for the Florida Congressional District 13 Forum. It's with great pleasure that I introduce our moderator, Adam Smith. Thank you so much for joining us today, Adam.
Hey guys, wherever you are. So far, this is for those of you who are maybe just tuning in and have not paid close attention to this congressional race. This is Congressional District 13, more or less represents South Pinellas, and it is a Democrat, former Republican, former Independent, current Democrat, Charlie Crist, who represents the district. But this is not a overwhelmingly Democratic district. This is a district that Donald Trump lost by just about 3 points, Pinellas County, which Donald Trump won. So this is definitely a potentially competitive race, and we have a crowded field with us. And I'm going to start. We had one very last-minute cancellation. That was Anna Paulina Luna that confirmed she was going to be here until late last night. She said something suddenly came up, and she couldn't, or she had a conflict. George Buck, I don't think, has signed on. He's supposed to be here. And we had Sheila Griffin, but she's having some technical difficulties.
I made it.
Oh, you're there. Good. I'm sorry. I'm a technological Luddite, so I don't see everybody on my screen. There we go. Here's George.
Got me?
Hi, everybody.
Hey.
Hey, George.
So we only have one semi-excused absence, Anna Paulina Luna. I'm going to start it out by just asking you all to, in 3 minutes, introduce yourselves. Tell the people about you and what makes you the best candidate to take on Charlie Crist in November. And I'll go, at least on my screen, in reverse order, starting with George Buck. Who are you and what makes you the best candidate to take on Charlie Crist?
Well, thanks, Adam. I hope you're enjoying your retirement from the Tampa Bay Times. My background is I've been a public servant all my life. I've worked in emergency services, catastrophic disaster management, counterterrorism operations worldwide. And I feel I'm the best candidate because I've got the boots on the ground experience. I've been to 48 different countries in the last 20 years, working catastrophic disasters. I've worked with governments, foreign and domestic, state, local. I'm a retired firefighter, and I was also a soldier of the 101st Airborne Division during the first Persian Gulf War. And then I came out to Florida after my medical injury in the fire department, and I taught the fire science program at SBC and also designed the first disaster management program, education degree program in the state of Florida for SBC. And I also was given a grant by the late Congressman Young. He gave me money to start the National Terrorism Preparedness Institute. Then I went over to USF. I taught at the College of Public Health. I taught catastrophic disaster management, and I was co-founder of the Center for Biological Terrorism Defense. I've been called upon by FEMA, and I've written the reports on the urban violence in St. Petersburg. I did it for Homeland Security, and also did the reports, and these are not only the findings of negative things, but we came up with solutions, and that's what I'm going to be carrying on into Washington is solutions. I always feel that once you recognize the problem and don't have a solution to the problem, then you're part of the problem. So I hope I can get you a vote on August 18th and November 3rd.
Thank you, George. Sheila Griffin, if 3 minutes, Who are you and what makes you the best candidate to take on Charlie Crist?
Thank you so very much. It's such a pleasure to be here, Adam. In 1979, a tagline was added to a 55-year-old product here in the United States. They said that it was because of its endurance and strenuous testing to expose its flaws and its weaknesses. Still today, they don't need to say built for tough, but they do. And we all understand when they say it, they mean strength and endurance and beauty. My parents, Bernard and Betty Scott, came here when I was 2 years old. They were entrepreneurs and scholars. They taught us the treasure of hard work, and they taught us faith in God, charity, and resilience. As a cute, precocious child attending Glen Oaks and Childs Park Elementary School, I've been raised in Pinellas. I have no idea at that time what life would be so tough or that it would be so rewarding. Like Built Forward Tough, when I say I am the face of the fight, as an experienced African-American mom, pastor, scholar, I understand that the price to become tenacious, committed, and passionate about freedom has already been paid. My name is Sheila Griffin. I'm a candidate for U.S. House of Representatives. I believe that I am the credentialed one in law, international law, public administration, theology. I'm also the dark horse in this race because I didn't come with intelligence. I come with intelligence, but not insider influence. I come with experience, but not exposure. I come with credentials for charity and compassion, but not cash. We need a representative that has an idea of what has gone on in Tampa Bay, that understands regional planning, and that has put their heart to doing work. You don't begin charity when you get ready to run. When you're for the people long before you ever sign up for office. I believe I can beat Charlie on the ground because this is my territory. I'm homegrown and I know people here. And it's important to be connected to organizations and to service. And these things cannot be traded in. Like my story of triumph over adversity, the next phase of American history will explode into a story of triumph. I plan on being a part of that. I want to be your next Congresswoman running in District 13, and it will be my honor to serve. Always decide to choose the candidate that has leadership in mind, and let's make history together.
Thanks a lot. Amanda Mackey, introduce yourself, please, and tell us why you're the best candidate to beat Charlie Crist and represent South Pinellas.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you to Barclay and Amy for putting this event together. I know this takes a lot of work, but I can speak for all the candidates that we really appreciate this opportunity in a COVID pandemic environment. It's hard to interface with people, and so this is a great opportunity for us to do that. My name is Amanda Mackey. I am running for the Florida's 13th congressional district, and we're hoping to unseat Charlie Crist. And the reason that I think I'm the best candidate is because my experience really separates me from everyone else on this stage. I've worked and done a lot of the job that I'm hoping that you will elect me to do. I worked for a decade in Congress as a senior healthcare advisor and a lawyer working on Medicare, healthcare, veterans issues, helping people with their Medicare claims, with their veterans claims, and getting caught in the cogwheels of a federal government bureaucracy. Your first line of entry is through your representative's office, and something that I believe we're lacking and has been neglected in this community is really having a public servant, having someone who has the heart of a public servant. And when I think of what Bill Young did for this community and his staff, George Creticos, and everyone who worked for him for the 43 years he was in office, what he did for Pinellas County is just incredible. And if we could have someone that just holds a candle to what he did, we would be much better off. I want to tell you a little bit about myself. I was born in Iran, and my family and I immigrated here when I was just 11 months old. We fled and escaped a dictatorial, oppressive government. And my parents were 26. They didn't have two nickels to rub together. They came to the United States and they worked hard. My mother delivered yellow pages to put my father through school, and he ultimately became a surgeon. He's a surgeon to this day. And I always just say that in the greatest country on earth and the greatest democracy on earth, the one thing that we have is the ability to each have our own American dream, and every one of us has it. And when I think of how hard they work and the sacrifices that my father made, really sacrificing being a father to be able to give his family a better life, that's what this is about. That's what's at stake for our country. I got involved in politics when I was at College Republican, and then I went on to be a political appointee just weeks after 9/11, working at the Pentagon in the Bush administration. I'm a native Farsi speaker, and the opportunity to be able to do that, to be able to serve my country that way, and work in Congress for a decade as a lawyer, as a healthcare and veterans advisor, I think just prepares me in a way that's very different than anyone else. I've also put in the hard work. I've raised the money. We've raised over $740,000. And as of the end of Q1, we have $613,000 cash on hand. So we've done a very good job of not only raising money, but managing our finances as well. And, we've really put this race on the map. I mean, Adam, you talked about how important this race is because it could be your classic, toss up, swing district. And what I think I've really done is shown that. And that has elevated this race to having Kevin McCarthy, the Republican leader, endorse me, Steve Scalise, the Republican whip, endorse me, and really to elevate this race to make known how important it is. Because as you say,
I'm going to pull the hook out soon. We're going to be strict about the time limits here.
Well, I'll wrap up right there. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I look forward to your questions today.
Sharon Newby, tell people who you are and what makes you the strongest candidate to beat Charlie Crist.
Well, I'll try to be a little more brief. I arrived in Florida from Illinois. My family on my mother's side farmed, so I'm familiar with farming issues. I was born in a town that was named for Abraham Lincoln before he became a national figure. He actually christened my hometown with a watermelon. I love that story. We moved down here, the three of us. We sold everything we had, including my son's teddy bear, to buy a business down here. And that was in 1977. We bought a music company that works primarily with seniors. And today we work almost 95% with churches. We probably have 2,000 customers in Florida, many in this area here. As a business owner, I am self-funding. I am not asking people for money. I don't know about you, but every time I open an email, somebody's asking me to contribute to a campaign. Half the time, I don't know anything about them. The other side of that is we have something called dark money, where politicians are endorsing politicians. I think we need to take our elections more to the grassroots level and keep the big money out of our elections. Let the people make their choice. As a business owner since 1977, I feel I've contributed and earned the respect of many people in this community. I've paid in probably over $600,000 in property taxes to support police, fire, and schools. I've probably generated over $100,000 in discretionary sales tax for Pinellas County alone. I live here. I've been here for 42 years. I'm close to the people here. I have been here since 77. I'm not a recent transplant. I wasn't assigned to this district. And as a business person, I think I am much better prepared to help this president restore the economy and build the jobs that are so vital. We've got to take people out of the streets and into the workplace where they have a level of confidence and self-satisfaction, because the rioting is disgusting, and it's destroying the tax base of the very people that are complaining about issues in their community. Don't destroy business. That's where the money, the revenues come from for all these programs that people are asking for.
Thank
And
you, Ms. Newby. I'm going to follow up right with you on that topic. Obviously, we have protests, mostly peaceful, I guess, so far across the country. You're in a district that has had, in 1996, had some significant violent riots over police actions. What's your view of law enforcement in general? Is there systematic inequality? And what's your view of Black Lives Matter, the movement in general? Starting with, we're going to go back the way we came, starting with you.
First of all, I don't know a single occupation that doesn't have a few bad apples in it. I don't condemn healthcare workers because I watched a man beating an elderly man in a nursing home. We don't riot when we hear about school teachers sexually abusing students. We cannot operate governments, businesses on emotion. This has to be logical decisions. We are, of course, understanding of people's emotions. We see injustice, and we certainly don't like it. But quite frankly, when I see police having to put on riot gear, I think they should be treated the same as the military that goes into a war zone. Those boys are paid hostile fire pay. Nobody should have to take a bullet to do their job. This has to stop. And being soft on it is not going to get the results we want. We must have order in this country. We must have justice. These people must be accountable for the things they've done wrong. There's no question about that. I was disgusted watching what happened in Minneapolis. But maybe that's an indictment of that city that did not train their police officers accordingly and give them the funding they need for
Thank you, Ms.
proper
Newby.
training.
Ms. Mackey, do you think there's a systematic problem, need for reform in law enforcement? What's your view of Black Lives Matter?
Look, I mean, I think we should, certainly investigate what's happening here to what happened to Mr. Floyd. And, it's as someone quoted it, it's as wrong can be what happened to him. Of course it is. I mean, I don't know a single person who would disagree with that. But what has ensued since then, I think, when you look at potentially, businesses, I think they were talking about 40,000 businesses have been affected by this. If you look at what has happened, larceny, arson, even, stabbing of a police officer. I mean, these are things that we cannot tolerate as a society. So are there bad actors in every field? I mean, to Sherry's point, of course there are. But, I think taking this to the level that it's come to, it's very scary for our country when I see the national monuments desecrated and, graffitied. I mean, when do we allow for this lawlessness? I mean, we don't. This is a country of laws. If we are nothing, we are a country of laws. And
Amen.
so I think that it is very important for us to, of course, look at what's happening and understand that what happened to Mr. Floyd should never happen. But what is happening in our streets today is very scary. And if you're a small business owner here in Pinellas County and the thought or the threat of, we're going to defund the police, it is so anti-American to even think that way. And I can't even imagine for a second to think that we have come to a point where we want to defund our police. And I completely disagree with that. And I really just struggle to find words for how these small business people or just individuals who may need, the services of our police will have to contend with this even being an issue or a debate. What does that tell you about what's going to happen with the morale of our police if this is the way that we're treating our first responders?
Thank you. Ms. Griffin, what about you? Black Lives Matter and these marches and protests and the issue overall?
think you've attached something that I'm not sure is appropriate. Number one, you ask about Black Lives Matter, and then you ask about the rioters and protests, and I'm not sure they're the same thing. America has a history of ignoring pain of individuals of different sex, not just African Americans. We have a history of ignoring and then being surprised when a wound has festered, has not been cleansed. Nevertheless, there's cries for help. I am concerned that we don't listen. I'm concerned that the incidences that happened to Mr. Floyd had nothing to do with just that incident. If you track the history related to that region, how many people were arrested, how many people were beaten, how many things had gone unsolved. It had nothing to do with us saying, okay, we get it. This guy was wrong. It had to do with what it looks like for a whole community to be intimidated all the time. And I am concerned that when we're talking about this, we're not talking about the general culture. We always pigeonhole it to a small fraction of people. And that's not just the truth. There are people who understand that we have systemic matters. Systemic matters like when America built her interstate, she took out every place that there was great economic value. Like here on 22nd Street in St. Petersburg, that was wiped out. They promised that interstate would not cut through those 40-something businesses, but it did. It did in Tampa, it did in Miami, it did in Jacksonville. So when you're looking at African Americans, most people do not understand why they're not prospering. It's systemic because it's planned. When you take out all of the homes that were in the dome, when you begin to move certain things, the pain here, somehow or another people began to associate that with the pain there. And that's what happens with the marches. The marches aren't just about Floyd. They're about a cry for help. And what I would propose is that the conversation talks about the systems. Systems have building blocks, and they should have a way for people to enter them and to do so peacefully. They also should have a way for people to be able to express how they feel and what's going on. However, what we normally do is we patch it and move on to the next electoral cycle, and then we leave it for the next person to take up. America is looking at a thing that we look at for justice. Justice is great interest of man, according to Daniel Webster. And so when I look at what's going on, I am for every legal action and against every illegal abuse of power. That's with the children, that's with the protesters, that's with anyone. And I think all of us should agree the same.
Thank you. George Buck, what about you?
Thank you. Talking about Black Lives Matters and Antifa, these are issues that we're going to have to discuss legitimately and not reactively. What's going on with Congress right now is a disgrace because they're kneeling and they're starting to pass police reform nationwide on a blanket solution that's not going to work because podunk nowhere, their sheriff office does not have the same problems as New York City, LA, California, those. So for 2 weeks ago, the entire country was united because everyone, didn't matter what color they were, what nationality, what sex, what political party, we were all united at the disgusting display by those officers extinguishing George Floyd's life. So now we need to come together and we need to do solutions, not just this rioting. This rioting has gotten so out of control. Anytime that you have Antifa, right now, what scares me is that we have Black Lives Matter and Antifa and so many other radical groups, not only domestic, but international, because I have good intelligence that there are a lot of international money coming into these groups along with George Soros. So this is what we have to change. We've got to change all this and make sure that we have a dialogue. And everybody in America are Americans. When I was a firefighter medic and in the Army, I never saw color. I never addressed color. We were all Americans. They were victims of a car accident or a shooting or some kind of incident like that, but everybody was an American. We need to come together as America. We need to stop, you're this, I'm that, and make sure that this community is safe, the country is safe, and we defend it. Because right now, we are watching America burning, and this has to stop.
George, I'm going to ask you one snarky, direct question before we go to the others, and that is you ran before and you overwhelmingly lost. And so there's some people saying, why would we go with George Buck again when he got crushed by Charlie Crist?
Yeah, exactly. Last time I declared 9 months prior to the election. I never thought about running for office ever in my life. I only raised $21,000, but I still took 45% of the vote. by doing shoe leather and shaking hands. That's why I'm back. And this time it's a lot different, because wait until you see what our campaign is doing, and it's all positive, because I'm the one that's going to go up to Congress because I have boots on the ground. I may not have been a politician, but I've testified in front of Congress. I've been on C-SPAN on urban violence and firefighting issues. So I know the system there, and I also have good contacts internationally and nationally.
I'm going to go. Comes from Rebecca Falkenberry. I'm slightly rewording this, but can you all, starting with Ms. Griffin, give a grade for Donald Trump and an assessment for him? Would you like to campaign with him?
I would love to campaign with Donald Trump. My assessment for him, I've been chronicling all of, matter of fact, he was not my candidate. He was not my choice for the primary. But however, I am one of those people. I'm also the president of the panel of Suncoast Black Republicans. And so I've been chronicling everything he does from his first executive orders, whether it was King or the opportunity zones, or it was making sure we preserve Medgar Evers' home, all the money that's being pulled, the money that's making the stability of historically Black colleges and universities. For African Americans, incredible. For restoring Jerusalem, incredible. For fighting for Jewish rights, incredible. There are things that I don't like about tone. I don't like about vernacular, but I'm tracking the hands. My grandmama told me, baby, don't pay any attention to their mouths. Follow their hands, follow the money. And the money right now is going to actually help America. I'm looking at the tariffs and the balancing, and I'm pleased with that. I'm also pleased with many of the things that we've done in our international relationships that have brought companies home that somebody said, what, does he have a magic wand? Well, I don't know if he has a magic wand, but what I do is we've gotten results, and I'm proud of that.
Thank you. And Ms. Newby, same question to you, a grade for Donald Trump, and would you like to campaign with him? How's he doing?
He's wonderful. He's wonderful. I would make this observation. Can you think of any other person in this country that could have withstood what he has been subjected to for the last 3 years and still be standing? He has fought people in his own party, in Washington Democrats, the media, Hollywood. He's fought everybody and has accomplished more than any other president in the same time period in our history. He is wonderful, and he is exactly what we need in this country. We need strength. We do not need to kowtow to violence. He is standing up for American values, and he's trying to be just where he sees injustice. He has employed more minorities than any other president in our history. And I would be thrilled to work alongside him.
Thank you very much. George, same question to George Buck.
I don't know how Donald does it every day. He gets up every day and he talks about America first, probably the first thing that he enters his mind. I stand with him. I give him an A+. I'm not 100% behind him because I don't think he wants yes men or women. So I'm with him all the way. I did object to one thing when he was talking about bringing the Taliban to Camp David. I actually wrote the White House and said no, because I don't want to legitimate the Taliban. So I think Trump is doing a fabulous job with the economy, the jobs, and it's coming back already. Just look at the stock market and look at last week's employment records. They're going up. And we're going to keep on going up. And he's still making America great.
Amanda Mackey, Donald Trump.
He's really done an incredible job. And I think, I go door to door, and when you talk to people, it's very different than, calling and getting polling information. And people here really appreciate everything Donald Trump has done. And people will tell you that. I'll just tell you some of the things that they say. The economy is strong. Obviously, we've all talked about that, but specifically 2.5 million jobs created in the month of May. What he's done on Israel, foreign policy, taking out Qasem Soleimani, one of the most dangerous thugs who had American blood, lives of American soldiers' blood on his hands. All those things that he's done that we've forgotten because we were so focused on Corona and everything that has since happened, going after China long before Corona was ever an issue. And really, you hear from people who we're largely a Midwestern transplant district. We have, the guy or the gal who worked in a ball bearing plant in Canton, Ohio, moving down here, or Indiana. And they talk about China and stealing our jobs. And they say, finally, we have a president who stands up to China. And I think, that's something that's very important. But, offshore drilling, no offshore drilling. He did that. And that's something that I know is really important to people. So I would be proud to, campaign with someone who has a record that speaks for itself. And I look forward to him spending time here because this is, as you mentioned, this is Pinellas County is the bellwether of the state, and it's going to be very important and critical for the presidency.
Thanks. And sticking with you, Mark Walker asks, what's the most pressing problem that Florida 13 faces?
Well, I think, post-COVID, it's without a doubt getting our economy back going again. 50% of the people who are workers here in the 13th district work for a small business. We have got to make sure that we do everything in our power to get our economy going here again. Tourism is a $40 billion industry for the state. We got to make sure that's up and running again because we do have the number one beach in America, Clearwater Beach here, and we want to make sure that tourists continue to come here. But we also have 1,000 people a day moving to the state of Florida, and many of them are moving between Citrus and Manatee County. So they're right here in the Tampa Bay area, which is going to be a huge problem for infrastructure if we don't get that going. And so I think that's, infrastructure is something President Trump has talked about doing in a bipartisan way. And I hope that when he's reelected, the Democrats will work with him on a bipartisan infrastructure package because we really need it with our growth that we're expecting here. We're busting at the seams, and I can even see in the years since I've been here that the traffic has gotten so much worse on 275. I mean, I don't know why there's, it's a parking lot on 275 at 10 a.m. some days. And so I think that's just, these are the pains that people feel, and we want to make sure we address them.
Thank you. Ms. Griffin?
Thank you very much. I'm greatly concerned about economics, but I'm tying it directly to education. In our region, we have to look at the fact that we have federal dollars that are always coming in, and they're going into Head Start. Head Start is a social program that is designed to promote difference for those who are disadvantaged or marginalized. However, it also supports illiteracy and prohibits phonics and teaching. So we look at our 4-year-olds that are in our BBK program that we sponsor as a state. They're actually learning. And when they enter kindergarten, they're entering at an advantage because comprehension is required by first grade. However, those who are in Head Start sitting in homes all across Pinellas County are being mandated by federal policy not to teach reading at all. And so I'm concerned that when we start talking about economics, opportunities, and building, by the time we get to 4th grade, many of our children have been carted off to ESSA programs, and they have already been debilitated. And remember, poverty is not a race, it's not a culture. It is a systemic matter that sometimes happens arbitrarily depending on circumstances in people's lives. And so in our county, I'm concerned that our education, number one, has equity, that we are able to make sure all children are able to read by the time they enter school. And number 2, that our job placements, when we talk about by the time people are getting from 9th grade to 12th grade, they are looking at vocational, where they have great economic opportunities, and that education begins to play a key role in that. Each one of us, regardless of where we come from, we want to know that we have the choice to choose where our children are educated, how they're educated, and to make sure they have the greatest opportunity. As a foster
Thank you.
I'd like to speak to education when it's possible.
Well, the question to you is the same. What's the most pressing issue for Florida 13?
Well, for Florida 13, it's probably the same nationwide. Our children are not being taught civics. They're not being taught factual history. We have professors and teachers that I'm not sure they even are loyal to this country. In my opinion, teachers should be the same as civic servants and military. They are in front of our most valuable asset, our children. They should be required to take an oath of allegiance to this country. I cannot believe that we are putting people in front of our children that are trying to teach sedition and rioting. It's unheard of. We're destroying our own country via our own children. Kids come home from the universities, they don't even know their own children. This is wrong, and we've got to do something about it fast.
Thank you. And George Buck, briefly, what's the most important issue facing the district, and what are you going to do about it?
Well, that's a loaded question right there, because there are quite a few things that have to go. If I only had one issue to go up to Congress, that'd be a great job. But there are so many issues. One of the biggest issues that I'm concerned about is our environment. And we have to keep our environment pristine. We've got to work on solutions. The other thing is education. I think that a school in Clearwater should be just as good as a school in South St. Pete. We have to be equal in the schools and give every child the chance. And like the other candidate said, we're not teaching civics anymore. We're not teaching American history. Thank God Governor DeSantis is doing that. He's requiring all that. And the other thing is the economy. I mean, 2 months ago, I probably wouldn't even have talked about the economy. I would have said I was just jumping on President Trump's coattails and just continue to help it along. But now we have to rebuild rebuild the economy and bring businesses back to here. And not only labor businesses, but also technology businesses and service businesses, because we know most of the service industry has been hit very hard after this pandemic.
Amanda Mackey, Corey Givens asks, what's your position on expanding offshore drilling, which is something that the Trump administration had supported and has been a little bit both sides of that, but they initially came out supporting more offshore drilling. What's your view?
Yeah, I mean, I don't, I think that when we look at what we have here, we have the most pristine beaches, and, you can be the most conservative and you want to protect our shorelines, you want to protect our environment. And I don't support that. I understand that there are the environmental needs of our community is of paramount importance here. And people move here for what we offer them, which are obviously the incredible coastline that we have. And so I don't support that.
How about, I'll just ask this rather than, does anybody in this group is open to expanded offshore drilling? No.
I don't think it's necessary.
No.
First of all, we have other sources for oil production. We don't need that.
We have to really pay attention to the fact that inside the Gulf, we have what they call mountains. Mountains do live in the sea, but they're sheer. And so when I was at the regional Tampa Bay Regional Planning Council, one of the presentations taught us about what would happen in an oil spill. Forget the 10 lives that were lost in the last oil spill, which we really quickly just dismissed. The oil goes straight down into caverns that it will never come back up, except as a pollutant. And there is no way to just recover that. Even though right now we're talking 125 years, the proposal by Rooney was to make it lifetime. I'm for that proposal. I know that Senator Scott and I know that Senator Rubio have signed on to, I think, 2027. They want to restrict until that time. I would like to see a lifetime proposal on that.
Thank you. Corey Adler asks, if you win this election and the president loses, how will you work across the aisle to support the new president? I'll start with George.
It's not bipartisan. I'm not that far right. I'm a little right to center. However, we have to work together. We've got to stop this nonpartisanship or this partisanship. This is killing our country. It's going on right today. And we have no choice. They have no choice that we have to work together. Period. I'm going to go up there and I'm going to support some Democratic bills, and I'm going to be putting in my own bills. Hopefully I'll be getting Democratic support. I'm very good friends with Jennifer Webb. I think she's a great lady, and she works on the other side of the aisle for the state representatives. So I'm willing to talk to them because they have ideas, I have ideas, and fortunately my ideas all went out.
Sharon, what about you? How would you promote bipartisanship or work with the other side of the aisle if it's President Biden?
That's a challenge, isn't it? I am so pro-Trump. The idea that he would lose is just beyond my imagination, because the choice we're being offered is a gentleman that belongs in a home. Truly, he belongs in a home. And I can't believe that they're even going to nominate that man. The only thing that I worry about is that he will withdraw and we will see a stronger Democrat candidate. But if Biden is the nominee, I cannot imagine him winning. Country over party is always the answer. Always the answer. And any candidate that goes up there is going to try their best to work across the aisle. But dear God, I hope Trump wins.
Thank you. Amanda Mackey, would you think you could work with the other side of the aisle?
I think that infrastructure is something, like I mentioned before, that the president has pushed the Democrats to work with him on. I mean, it's something that is logical. It's rational. What is the problem there? There's no politics in infrastructure. We're trying to improve our roads and bridges. And, I really hope after the partisanship that the Democrats have exhibited and really just going after the president, they get paid $174,000 a year to do a job. And no one tasked them with the job of just spending our money on impeachment and on investigations and, various bogus reports. I really, truly believe that. I think people want, again, we're the greatest democracy and the oldest democracy on planet Earth. And we want to make sure that we have people who are enhancing and improving people's lives. And again, being a public servant. And so I really think that infrastructure is something that I look forward to working with other folks on the other side of the aisle and within our party to do.
Ms. Griffin, this is from Wendy Grassi. What has Charlie Crist done or not done that he deserves defeat?
Charlie Crist deserves defeat because he's failed to be a representative of the people. It's one thing to show up in a region and walk and offer people coffee and things of that nature. However, there's major budgeting decisions. He had the audacity to actually back a bill to impeach a president for something that never occurred. He had the audacity to even show up here and to not do the things for veterans that he promised he would do. Charlie Crist, as nice as he is, and he's a very pleasant man, he does not agree to serve the population. As a person who's conscientious and courageous, I have no intention of allowing things to just pass by. Charlie needs to have an opportunity to retire. He has been here. We've seen his face. We understand you live here, Charlie, but this is not your home. You're not a citizen representative, and that means you're not qualified. You have to have charity as a part of your regular lifestyle. You have to actually know what it means to have a regular job, to actually have to know how to make payroll on Thursday. You don't qualify because you've never felt what it feels like to be a citizen. We have citizen representatives for a reason.
Thank you. Amanda Mackey, why should Charlie Crist be fired?
I can think of a million reasons, but I'll tell you specifically. So my tagline has always been, Charlie's been campaigning since I was 9 years old. I'm 42 today. He's been in office for 3 decades, and I can't figure out, and no one has been able to tell me what he has done in the 3 decades he's been in office other than run for something better every 4 years. And that's, again, not having the heart of a public servant. To further put a finer point on that, 2 weeks ago in Congress, he voted on electronic voting so that he wouldn't have to be bothered by going to Washington. He submitted his proxy vote. It's public document. You can see it to Stephanie Murphy, Congresswoman from Orlando, to do his vote for him because he said due to COVID restrictions, he couldn't make it back to Washington, but yet somehow Stephanie Murphy could. And then he went to the rocket launch. So, it's just a constant Charlie talking out of both sides of his mouth, and people here are tired of it. They're ready to have real representation once again. And I think, again, just, channeling in, what Bill Young did for this district, we want to go back to having a real public servant. And Charlie has demonstrated just with that proxy vote 2 weeks ago that he is not someone who cares about this job. He's just coasting.
George Buck, Charlie Crist.
Well, last time I was in Washington, D.C., I met with a few politicians, and they think he's just an empty suit. Charlie's a junior congressman, and he's been put on appropriations. Usually that takes years. We haven't seen any of the benefits of that like we did with Congressman Young. Charlie Crist is an empty suit. He doesn't deserve to be in there because all he's doing is running for himself. He likes the parties. He likes the atmosphere, pretty good salary. And I had a personal incident with Charlie Crist. I'm a disabled veteran. I went down on a hard landing in the military. And I went to a veterans group that he was sponsoring. And he was going to talk about our benefits. And there was 50 combat wounded soldiers in that room. It was a 2-hour work session. Charlie walked in 50 minutes into it, sat in the corner for 5 minutes, played with his phone, stood up and said, "Oh, I'm rah, 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 I'm here for the veterans." And then he turns around and says, "I have a veteran in the audience who hasn't received his medals from Korean War. Would you come up here?" Click, click, few pictures, turned around and walked out the door. Never spoke to us, never took any questions. So when I become a congressman, I'm closing his downtown office and I'm putting my office on the campus of Bay Pines for 2 reasons. One is I want the veterans to be able to have easy access to their congressional representative. And the other reason is I want the people of St. Petersburg and Pinellas County to go to Bay Pines and see the cost of freedom.
Sharon Newby, Mark Walker asked about federal spending. We're on track to add about $4 trillion to the deficit with the corona relief spending. How would you get a handle on federal spending? And in terms of extending the $600 a week unemployment money, would you support extending that?
There's no need for $600 spending if people have jobs. People don't need support if they have work. But I'd like to go back to Charlie Crist because I think you skipped over me on that one. I cannot believe that a representative of Florida voted to impeach our president not once, but twice. He had no grounds to do so. I was at a veterans group during Veterans Day, and let me tell you, the applause that they were kept asking for was very polite. And he had just voted to impeach the most popular
Before we run out of time, I want to try to squeeze
since
in a couple
Eisenhower. Since Eisenhower.
Ms. Griffin, what was your view on extending unemployment because they will run out shortly?
I don't have a view on extending unemployment per se. I don't mind extending unemployment if it's at the state level. I do mind extending the federal. I believe that what we need to do concerning our debt and concerning what we've done is begin to look at the tariffs that we have increased and collected and begin to put the appropriations directly to our debt. We have to get this debt down. This is not optional. Our nation is in trouble, and the people that we owe this debt to are not our friends. This is important to us. We know it as our personal lives, and I want to say that we also ought to be able to feel it as, I know it's not a popular subject, but as the constituencies of the United States, we've got to make a difference, and that's what I'm for.
Thanks. Amanda Mackey on federal spending and on extending the federal unemployment.
Sure. So I would say on federal spending, I mean, this is a question, whether you're Democrat, Republican, Independent, you want to know why your tax dollars are being spent in, trillions of dollars that we've spent. And in fact, people always bring up the Kennedy Center that Nancy Pelosi fought so hard to include in the CARES Act. Why do we taxpayers need to be paying for the Kennedy Center? And these are all valid questions. And I completely agree with everyone's assessment that we have to do something on our deficit. We just spent $3 trillion. When I go to Washington, what I really want to do is fine tooth comb everything that we spent during the coronavirus, understandably an emergency situation, but we need to look at clawing back, whatever it is that we that was unnecessarily spent or that wasn't necessary to have out there. The other thing that I think we need to talk about more, and there was someone named Dr. Tom Coburn, who was a senator for 12 years. He ran on term limits, and he served his 2 terms. He has now since passed. He passed away in March. But one thing that he did such a good job of is going to the Senate floor and talking about waste, fraud, and abuse in our government agencies. Talking about wasteful spending, there was one thing I remember, it was called shrimp on a treadmill. I mean, it was just things that were really not going towards life-saving therapies. They were just doing research on nonsensical things. And I think that having a little bit more rational approach and really taking the budget of the United States and looking at it the way that you balance your own budget, we need more people to do that and not just think, well, that's other people's money that we're spending. That's the wrong approach. And that's why I want to fine tooth comb what we're spending on, look at waste, fraud, and abuse, and address those issues when I serve in Congress.
George Buck, this is to you from Connie Bruce asking why you think Antifa is responsible for so much, and do you think any other groups might be involved? You kind of lumped Antifa and Black Lives Matter together, if I'm not mistaken.
I also said that there were domestic and international groups involved. So it's just not Antifa, it's just not Black Lives Matter. They're the prominent ones we're seeing right now, but there are a lot of underlying groups, domestic and international, that are funneling money and training to a lot of these groups.
Okay. I'm going to let each of you ask one question to whoever else you want on this group, and I'll start with you, Sharon Newby. Ask one of your opponents any question you'd like.
Explain dark money, and I'd like Amanda Mackey to answer that question.
Dark money, I believe, is what is spent in super PACs. And most politicians, certainly the presidential candidates, all have super PACs associated with basically trying to further their interests. And so they will run ads generally, and they will do work that is supposed to be completely walled off from the candidates. So that's my understanding of dark money as it pertains to candidates who have super PACs that people have formed on their behalf.
Do you feel you're obligated to people that contribute large sums of money to your campaign?
Okay, quickly, yes or no? And
my obligation is to the people of the 13th district. They're the people who vote you in. And so just in 2 years, if they don't like what you're doing, they vote you out. And so everyone on this stage, their obligation should be to the people of the 13th district.
Amanda Mackey, what question would you ask and to whom?
I would ask of George Buck just specifics on what you would like to do for the veteran community, and what is it that you can offer as someone who has really taken on that mantle. What is it that you see you need to be doing or you need to be talking about with regards to the veteran community?
George Buck.
Thank you. I'm a disabled veteran. I received my health care at Bay Pines. So I'm going to be an advocate for better health care. I'm not crazy about the choice program in most incidents. However, I think that the veterans we need to deal with the suicide rate, we need to deal with the homelessness, and we need to do with just general care for a lot of these veterans with their PTSD. This is PTSD month right now, and we have to do everything we can to make sure that veterans are above illegals. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be at the VA, and every time there's a hassle with the VA down here, I'll be going to the director's office. And when I'm up in Washington, I'm going to be at his office quite a bit, asking a lot of questions, and I want positive answers.
The reason I ask that is just, obviously we all know 1 out of every 10 in Pinellas County is a veteran. And so I think, elevating the issue is important for every candidate on this platform.
Thank you. George Buck, what question do you have for whom?
I think I'll ask all of them a question. How are you guys going to feel when I win?
Since we're running out of time, you got to pick somebody.
Okay.
Sorry.
Amanda, how long have you lived here?
I've lived here for 5 years.
And Ms. Griffin, what question would you like to ask and to whom?
I'd like to ask a question of Amanda, and it's on the Bayne-Dole Act and whether she supports the repeal of it for our private money going to universities and to private labs where they are utilizing that to create patent for themselves and profit, and they return those medicines back to us at enlarged rates. How do you feel about that?
So specifically, I would just say that, there is never a drug that is made in your medicine cabinet that was made by the federal government. So, I think that it's really important to realize how important the pharmaceutical industry is right now when we talk about trying to get a vaccine, trying to have a therapy brought to market. It's really important that those companies right now, people are talking about AbbVie. A month ago, they were talking about a different company. We want them working for us. And, they're always in the crosshairs because people think, they should do this or they should do that. At the end of the day, the drug companies that bring a therapy, when it's your child, when it's your mother, when it's you want them to bring a therapy to market. And I think that it's really...
How do you feel about the money and profiteering about the drug companies getting the patent for our money we invested? Because that was not so before this act. So I'm trying to ask, how do you feel about that?
Again, I would just say that we want pharmaceutical companies to be in a position to bring drugs to market. And I think right now is a perfect example during the pandemic where we're trying to do everything we can to fast track and make sure that they can do that because we're still in the middle of a pandemic. I mean, we've been very fortunate that we were one of the last to close, first to open, but the rest of the country is not in that situation. And we want to make sure that we do everything we can to have a therapy come to market sooner rather than later.
Thank you. Let's finish up with one because we've barely touched on coronavirus, and you've got St. Petersburg has been in your district, biggest city in the district. Rick Kriseman's been fairly aggressive about restrictions and whatnot. How do you give me an assessment of how we've done in our community in terms of protecting? Have we gone overboard? Have we not gone far enough? How are we doing? Starting with you, Ms. Newby.
Well, the most vulnerable in our society are the elderly. And to the extent that we need to protect them, we should. But when you see things going on like what happened in New York, where positive patients were sent into nursing homes.
But I'm talking about this district.
I understand. But to me, that was criminal activity. I think Mr. DeSantis has done a great job in prioritizing the needs of the nursing centers, but let's not punish the young people. They need to get out and work, make their mortgage payments and their car payments. Let's not destroy their lives in the process that we're trying to protect the elderly.
George Buck, do you wear a mask when you go to Publix?
No, I don't, because masks do not work. And They can be dangerous because you're inhaling your bacteria. A bacteria spore is much larger than a virus spore, and it can go through a regular paper mask.
That's right. That's right.
Do I just very quickly, do all of you decline to wear masks? It looked like everybody was nodding.
I do.
Does anybody?
I do
wear.
I do not wear a mask.
I'm sorry, if I'm entering a place where I know other people are susceptible and or other people may actually be contagious, I'll wear a mask. If a place is totally crowded, like when I show up at my local store that was deemed to be essential, I'll wear a mask. And I definitely don't wear it in the sunshine, which is designed especially as an antiseptic. And I definitely do not wear it when I'm just doing regular business in my office.
Amanda Mack, what's your assessment of how we've done in our community?
Sure. I mean, I would just say this. Publix did $1 billion in revenue during COVID, during the height of COVID. And so if we can go to Publix, we surely can go to the beach and socially distance. We surely can resume our day-to-day activities. And I, for one, am very glad that my church has reopened up. I go to Starkey Road Baptist Church, and what they've done is that 9 a.m. you sit in one row of pews, 11 a.m. you sit in the other row of pews. So there's no issues there. And I think we're all sophisticated and smart enough to be able to, figure out a way to continue to live our lives. And so I really feel for the people who are in states where their governors have locked them in, like Michigan and California. And much kudos should go to our governor, who was, again, one of the last to close, first to open. And we're all doing just fine, and we're all coping with it. And for those who are compromised, they don't leave their house. They can make those decisions. Individuals are smart enough to make those decisions. We don't need a government that locks us into our homes.
Thank you. I think I should probably turn it. I appreciate it to all of you, and I should turn it over to Amy and Barclay at this point. Shouldn't I?
Adam, thank you so much. And I have two important things. Number one is our next virtual event is June 24th. It's the local school board District 7, which is currently held by Renee Flowers. We're having that debate here, and we hope you'll join us then. Second thing is, thank you, Adam. It's a pleasure having you on our board and your volunteer hours. And thank you to all the candidates. We realize this is a time out of your personal life and time out of your regular campaign life now. But it's very important during these times to keep our debates so that our democracy continues to work. So thank you so much for your time. And I hope everyone has a wonderful afternoon.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thanks,
so much.
everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
It's
you,
been a joy.
Amy.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.